Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 AIBPM Talks, the international webinar. I am Eti Wulandari on behalf of the AIBPM. Today, we will be having a webinar with Professor Dr. Mamun Habib as the keynote speaker. Good morning, Doctor. And Dr. Rajesh Kumar Nair as the moderator. Good morning, Dr. Rajesh.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, AIBPM staff. Good morning.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, before the webinar begins, I would like to let all of us to see the AIBPM's profile. And now, I would like to invite you to listen to our national anthem, Indonesia Raya, before we start the webinar. And ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our moderator today, Dr. Rajesh Kumar Nair. Dr. Rajesh Kumar Nair is a PhD in Commerce and Management with a total of 26 years in corporate and academics in MBA College. He has been a consultant to various SMEs, consulting them in marketing, sales promotion, sales training activities. He has also published various papers in academic journals of repute. Without any further ado, I would like the moderator to take over the session. Dr. Rajesh Kumar Nair, the time is yours.
Thank you, AIBPM. Good
Okay.
morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Rajesh Kumar Nair. I'm moderator for today's webinar, which is on publishing high quality Scopus International Index journal papers. I'll be conducting the presentation and discussion. The webinar will last approximately for 90 minutes. Before we start with the presentation, I would like to inform you about the rules of the webinar. All participants will be muted during the presentation. There will be a question and answer session after keynote speaker has finished his presentation. For participants, please click the raise hand button if you have anything to ask or suggest to the keynote speaker. The moderator has the authority to choose who will deliver the question or suggestion. And now let's start the presentation of our keynote speaker. The keynote speaker for today's webinar is Dr. Mamun Habib. Dr. Mamun Habib is a professor at School of Business, Independent University, Bangladesh. In addition, Dr. Habib is a visiting scientist of University of Texas, Arlington, USA. He has more than 18 years of experience in the field of teaching as well as training, workshops, consultancy, and research. At present, he is supervising some PhD students at local and international. His core research areas are supply chain management, production and operations management, operations research, research methodology. Finally, Dr. Habib is an active member of different professional organizations, including IE, where he is a senior member, IEOM, where he is a president of SEM Technical Division, IETI, senior member and board of director, IRED, where he is a fellow, JRDS, vice president, IEB, AMS, INFOMS, just to name a few. Over to you, Dr. Mahmood Habib.
Can you see my slide? Okay. So first of all, I'd like to give a special thanks to our today moderator, Dr. Rajesh, and as well as the organizer, AIBPM. I'm honored that I could deliver this kind of workshop for the participants. I think you already noticed that today our discussion on about this one that publishing high quality Scopus in journal papers. So now you understand that our discussion will be basically on the how we can produce the quality papers, especially for the Scopus in the journal. I don't want to only focus on Scopus in the journal. I like to focus as well as the Web of Science in the journal and so on. So let us start by this way that how we can get this idea. How you can get the research idea. This is the first thing, first question in our mind. When you like to do the research, you know that you have to think at first that that we need some idea that based on that you can think how we can produce the paper. So that is the best and easy way to get this idea is the Google option. And we always mention that Google is a source of knowledge. So if you like to get any idea, any knowledge, no problem, you can just go to Google and search from there. So I like to know about the Professor Dr. Rajesh Nair. So no need to ask about Dr. Rajesh Nair. So you can go to the Google, you can write down the Dr. Rajesh Nair name and you can explore. So that is the basic to search anything. So now come to the point, any topics, any area where you can do the research, where you can do the publication, you can get the idea from the Google. Basically, when you search anything on the Google, it's all of the secondary data already existing. And now you're using the search engine Google and you're getting that one. Here, those are the participants, more or less, you have an idea about the Facebook. And I think everybody you have a Facebook account. And every day you're spending the few hours on this Facebook. But today I'll show you some other networking place where you can apply. Google Scholar, academia.edu, ResearchGate. These are some of the networking site, and basically this is for the researcher networking site. So I suggest you that if you have an account, they're most welcome. If you don't have the account, you have to think how you can. You have to open the account of Google Scholar, Academy in your ResearchGate. So in those places, you'll get the idea about the research. There's a place of the researchers, academics, professors. So you can chat with them, you can discuss with them, get some new idea from there. We are talking about how you can do this idea. I mentioned that you have to use at least one online database. At least one online database. If you like to use more than one online database, that's fine. But sometimes there's a possibility that redundant papers. So we suggest you that you should depend on the only one online database. So you can choose their own online database. Suppose you have a university which online database are free. Or maybe they can give you the username and password so that you can apply that one. You can use that one. So online database. Maybe first you can choose the suppose if you think that you like to choose the Emerald, you can choose the Emerald. If you like to choose the Procus, and so on. You understand our main target is that what I said, that search and again search. What is research? Search and again search, again search. From where you have to search, we are giving some tips to you that how you can do the searching. The next one, the open access. You know that when you search in the Google, you are getting the both open access and traditional access. Sometimes some papers you could download, some papers you can download. When you can download, you are so happy. If you couldn't download, you are not so happy. So if you could download, that means open access. And I personally, I request you, if you're the young scholar, young researcher, so you have to start to search from the open access. You have to start to search from open access. And among the open access, the Intech is the leading open access in the world. Intech. Intech is the leading open access in the world. So it means that if you search in the Intech, everything is free access. So don't think about the bother to purchase this one. What it says, when you search anything from the Google, then you will get that sometimes you could download, sometimes you cannot download. So when you are not downloading, that you are demotivated. So that's why if you use open access, you'll be more highly motivated. Again, everything is the free access. I talked about Intech. Intech is the leading open access in the world. And you know that Intech, they have the Scopus index as well as the Web of Science index. Now you can, I think you can understand what is the significance of the Intech, what is the standard of the Intech. That is open access. You can download this one, anything from there, and it's Scopus as well as the Web of Science index. Now I assume that you have the paper. So when you have the paper, then you have to download. And after the download, you have to review the paper. Okay. Now how you can review the paper? How you can read the paper? At first, you have to check the abstract. At first, you have to check the abstract. Okay. The first thing, the abstract. If is understandable, if is understandable, then you can go to the conclusion. In the conclusion, you have a few dimensions you have to check whether they have any findings, whether they have any kind of recommendation, whether they have any kind of limitation, any kind of implication, or future works. What I said there, you have to check, you have to review this one, the papers. You have to check the abstract at first. After the abstract, then you can check the conclusion. In the conclusion, you can check the findings, recommendation, limitation, implication, and future works. Their limitation, their future works, that is the starting point of your research. So what I said, that check this one, the conclusion, whether they have the findings, recommendation, limitation, implication, future work, so that you can start from there. And then you have to come to the introduction. Then you have to come to the introduction and so on. So I give you some tips that you have to start from the abstract. If it is understandable, is it acceptable, is it within your area, then go back to the conclusion. If it is understandable, then you have to move forward. Now, I suggest you in the review the paper, it is better that you have to avoid, it is the best option is that you have to avoid that the statistical part. Because if you check the statistical part, sometimes it happens that it will create some of the like the confusion, because still you don't know which one you have to apply. Still you don't know which one you have to apply statistics in your paper. Okay, so it's better to avoid at this stage. Now let's see the different types of paper. Are you hearing? Hello?
Yes, please, Dr.
Yeah,
Mamun.
sorry. I think there's some technical issues. Okay, so what I said, the different type of paper. If you see the different type of paper, then you can see this is that exploratory descriptive causal research. I don't want to talk too much about the different type of paper. I just give a little bit idea so that when you go to the like our construction of the journal paper, we have to understand. You see, the exploratory research. Basically, exploratory research is that is the something explore the new idea, new concept, new model. Explore the new idea, new concept, new model. Exploratory research. What is the best example of the exploratory research? PhD research. PhD research. You know that we assume that in the PhD level, you have to explore the new idea, new concept, new model. Exploratory research. And we are expecting some subsequent research. We are expecting some subsequent research from there. And definitely, we assume that is a continuous research going on. That's exploratory research. Explore. That descriptive research, like the case study based on the case study, any concept based on the organization, something like that. There is another type, basic and applied research. So you see, I just now mentioned the exploratory research, right? That's the another way. Now it's another way at basic research. Basic research means the pure research, means unique research. So just now I talked to the exploratory research. Exploratory research is the basic research. The develop the new model, new concept, new idea. What I said that PhD research. Applied research, I just now mentioned that the descriptive research based on organization, based on the real life application. Applied research application based on the real life application. So based on the real life application, based based on the real life application, then you have to think that, like, suppose you like to do the research on the KFC. You like to do the research on the KFC, like the traffic jam problem. It's a real life application, applied research, descriptive research. Quality and quantity research is another type you can express the quality and quantity research. So, I don't want to discuss in detail. So I just give the main brief idea so they can understand. I think you have some idea as well. Quantity research based on the quantity, based on the quantity, based on the number, based on the quantity, based on the number. Say you are doing the research based on the 300 respondents. You are doing the research based on the 300 respondents, 400 respondents. So this is a number. Statistical analysis. Is there statistical analysis? That is a quantity research. Based on the quantity, based on the number, so the statistical analysis. On the other hand, quality research, based on the, what do you call it, subjective interpretation, based on the subjective interpretation, like the small respondents, few expert. This is a quality research. So make it very simple. Quantity research is based on the quantity, based on the number, statistical analysis. And then the quality is based on the subject interpretation, small range of questioning, small sample size, broad range of questioning, something like that. And you know that when you design that the different types of research, then you have to mention. But you just remember, make it very simple. If you have the 200, 300, 400 respondent, that means if you do the statistical analysis, it's a quantity research. On the other hand, then you have to understand that quality research is not the best in the statistical analysis. Okay, research publication. You see, this is a very important thing is that when you think the research publication, today I'll give you the few tips that how you can get the publication idea. Earlier, I mentioned that you have to search the Google, you have to search in the online database. Now, this is another way you have to think how you can get the idea. Say you are a university faculty member, okay? So you are delivering the lecture every day. So you are providing them a semester project. We call it term paper. You are providing the semester project term paper. So when you're providing the semester project term paper, there are some students their works is a very innovative. They have the innovative works, semester project, student project. You have to choose them. You have to invite them. So that based on their idea, maybe you can publish the paper. They have the idea, but they don't have the experience how they write the paper. But you have the experience, so you can invite them and you can motivate them to write the paper. So you publish them for the student research project. The student will be the first author, and you will be the second author. And secondly, you can do one thing. Suppose you have a graduate, already student graduated, so they are doing the work in the multinational company in the corporate level. So they have the practical application knowledge, real life application knowledge. When you deliver the lecture in the class, that is theoretical knowledge. What they are practicing in the industry, this is the practical knowledge. So theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge. Okay. And now you can ask them what kind of gap they are noticing. So when they are learning in the classroom, this is the theoretical knowledge, and when they are applying the industry, what type of gap, what type of challenge they are facing. Based on their knowledge, based on their gaps, maybe you can publish the paper. Maybe the based on industry, the descriptive research. That is our target, what I said there. That means that those are working in the industry based on their experience, you can also publish the paper. So this is the two tips I just mentioned. You can apply. So when you have any kind of student, if you're a student and if you are doing any kind of research project, you can invite your student. It would be the one publication, or maybe your graduate student, they already in the job, so they have some experience in the industry. Based on that, you can also publish the publication. Okay, there are various types of publication, like conference paper, journal paper, book chapter, solo author book, different type of paper publication. Today, our concentration on the journal paper, but there is other types like conference paper, book chapter, and solo author book. So I just mentioned a brief idea about this. Few something. You see, I mentioned the conference paper. So I mentioned the conference paper. So conference paper, I always mention if you are the PhD researcher, PhD scholar, if you are the very new in the research, if you are very young faculty members, then you have to think about the conference first. You are very young in the research. I use the term the young researcher. Young researcher never depends on the age. It depends on your experience, young researcher. So then you have to make the plan for the conference. And due to the conference, you can get some networking, which is very important. If you join any conference, maybe you can get some co-author from there. Maybe you can get the co-researcher from there. And you know that if you present the paper in the conference, maybe when you are giving the presentation, maybe the audience, they give some comments, critic discussion. That could be helpful for you to revise the paper and to update the paper. And that's why you said that conference is very important for the young scholars. So secondly, then you have to think the journal paper, which is our target. And I always mention that the conference paper, the primary school, journal paper, the high school. So you have to go to the primary school, then you have to come to the high school. Journal paper. At first, you have to think the peer-reviewed journal paper. At first, you have to think the peer-reviewed journal paper. You know that sometimes it happens that if you think the Scopus in the journal paper, or if you think about suppose Web of Science in the journal paper, sometimes it's difficult to publish because it will take the long time. It will take suppose more than 1 year, 1.5 year, 2 years. And if the paper is rejected after 1 year, then it will be highly demotivated. So that's why I suggested to you that you can start by the peer-reviewed journal. It will take the 6 to 8 months. And in order to conduct the research, you need some motivation. So it will be the one kind of motivation for you. If you peer-reviewed journal, so if you search your name in the Google, you can get your paper. You'll feel the motivation. Then you can think about the Scopus in the journal or Web of Science in the journal. I already mentioned Scopus in the journal or Web of Science in the journal will take time. The duration is longer than 1 year. And then if you have the like the few journal paper, Scopus in Web of Science in the journal, then maybe you can make a plan for the like the book chapter, editorial book chapter editorial book. I believe that if you have a good community, say AIBPM, so they have a good community, so they can invite a few researchers, few professors, they can write a few chapters, and then they can compile and they can publish their own book. That is the editorial book. And nowadays, the editorial book is very popular because you see that there are a few co-researchers, they're working together in the same field, and based on their experience, based on the chapter, we can publish the book, editorial book. And then finally, the sole author book. Basically, if you have the editorial book, and if you're the renowned researcher, you'll get the offer to write the sole author book. The whole book will be written by you. So there is the chronologically thinking about the publication, how you can go for the publication. You start from the conference paper, ultimate target the sole author book. So basically today our discussion on the journal paper, how we can construct the journal paper. Okay, so today our discussion is that how we can construct the journal paper, and our target that the Scopus India Journal or Web of Science India Journal, or we could say high impact journal paper. Look very carefully here. We mentioned here that there is a few sections, so you have to think when you design the paper. The title will be there, abstract will be there, and then we have to think in the section, a different section like the introduction, literature review, methodology, model development, and then we have the section 5, and so on, section 6, and references. That is the more or less the outline to construct the only journal paper. I just give a few other information so that you can understand. You know at first that whether you paper the primary data, secondary data. If you paper based on the like secondary data, then no need to mention about the model evaluation, presentation of data analysis, just discussion. If you have the model, conceptual model, then you have to mention the section for model development. If you have model, suppose if you develop the conceptual model, then you have to think the model development section 4. And if you have a model development, then you have to think the model evaluation. Then you can think the model evaluation. So you know the earlier, whether you have the model or not. If you have a model, then model development, then model evaluation. If you don't have the model, then no need the section 4. No need the model evaluation. You just go for the discussion. If you have the survey, you are taking the 200 respondent, 300 respondent, in that case, data analysis. In that case, data analysis is the presentation data. So it depends on you. You know that. If you have a survey like the primary data, that means you have to think the presentation of data analysis part. But if you secondary data, just discussion. If you have a model, then section 4 will be there, and then section 5, the model evaluation will be there. Okay. So it means that whatever I mentioned today, the outline, it is not necessarily every time you have to use this format. It could be modified based on your requirement. So let us start. Let us start by the title at first. The title of the journal. You know, this is very important. That what would be your title? So you can think about you title the professional scientific academic language. You have to think whether you have the like professional language, academic language, scientific language, something like that. Definitely, this is the one of your target is that when you design the title, that you have to attract that audiences. So how can you attract the audiences without the scientific language? If you think the size of the title, I already mentioned this one that 10 to 12 words. Sometimes you can see some of the journal titles, the 24 words, 25 words. It's not applicable. If the title is too much long, the question will be, what is this? Why they are mentioning many things in the title? So you remember the title should be the in brief. And now come to the question is that how you can get the some experience of the title. Very simple. You can go to the like journal, say our AIBPM, they have some few journals. In their journal, they have the archives. Check the archives. Check the title. Say, suppose AIBPM, they organize a conference, so they have the conference proceedings. So check their conference proceedings. Suppose they have the 200 papers in conference proceedings, 200 titles. That is one experience and how we can review and observe the style of previous titles in the different conference proceedings or journal. I personally request you that do not come up the title within one night. At first, choose a few titles, 3, 4, 5 titles. Then rethink. Rethink not in the within one day. You can rethink in the after 2 days, after 3 days, few days. And then you have to do the brainstorm. Rethink by yourself, but brainstorm with your co-authors. You know that when you have paper, you have the 2 or 3 authors. There you have the co-authors. So you have to do the brainstorm with your co-authors. So and then you have to finalize your title end of the paper, right? So rethink and then brainstorm with the co-author. I just would like to give some example. You see, if you use the term that empirical study, exploratory research, it's a research term. Embedding, the impact analysis, some critical success factor. This is a term. So the sound is different. The title will be different. Professional academic language. We personally we recommend to avoid the name of a country, name of organization from the title. We personally suggest you that avoid that organization name, country name, or state name from the title. Say you're writing on paper, you mentioned case study on Bali, Indonesia. And now, what is your target? When you write any paper, you main target the lots of audiences, lots of readers. They have to use your paper. They have to use the paper citation references. But when you mention that a case study on the Bali, Indonesia, maybe the readers from the like the UK, they think, oh, this is the paper regarding the Bali, so no need to read. So you're reducing your audiences. So we suggest you that it is better that try to avoid the organization name and country name or state name from the title. Yes, you can write down that country name, organization name, or state name inside the paper, like the abstract, introduction, other place, no problem. But try to avoid from the title. Okay. There is recently you can that some of the title is a question mark. Some of the title consists of the question mark. Now comes the question: why the title will consist of the question mark? Basically, this is a research question. So research question. So now come to the question that why you're using research question in the title. No problem. The research question as a title, no problem. But as an editor-in-chief of the Scopus journal or editor board member, we always emphasize that better to avoid the research question from the title. If you use, I can repeat, if you use a question sign, research question in the title, no problem. It's not wrong, but we recommend to avoid this one. Because if you avoid the one research question, the next question will come up, why you use the research question there? Why don't have any other research question, something like that. Try to avoid the research question from the title. Abstract. You know that though you notice that abstract at first in the paper, but what do you think there? Did you write the abstract first? Or we write the abstract at last? Definitely we have to write the abstract last. We did not write the abstract first. And you know that if you ask me about the abstract, I would say that abstract is the glamour of the paper. Abstract is the glamour of the paper. It's a glamour. You know that everybody, all humans, they love to show their glamour. Whatever the man or the woman. Women, they prefer more to show the glamour, but men as well. So there is the abstract is the glamour of the paper. Glamour of the paper. So you know that when the reviewer, editor, board member, they have to check the paper, they have to check it for the abstract. So if you can attract the readers, if you attract the reviewers, editor, board member, that means that your paper there is a possibility to accept. So now comes the question: how we can design the abstract. So what I said earlier, as we have to write the abstract last. So I'll discuss the abstract last. So I'll come back this slide at the last. So that will be the last slide for today. Okay. So now introduction. You see that introduction is the first section. How did you write the introduction? I just remind you again, if you target to submit the paper in the journal, especially peer-reviewed journal or Scopus in the journal or Web of Science in the journal, and that first of all, your first job, you have to check the journal template. You have to check the journal template and you have to use the journal template. Do not use any kind of own template. So you can see this one, how many pages they will allow, how many pages they have. You can have to mention how many restriction of the words limit or something like that. Then you can design. So they mentioned that the paper should not be more than 8 pages. So you have to construct the 8 pages. And you know that you see in the slide, rationale, risk objective, significance, scopes, structure. No need to write the subtitle in this way. You can use a paragraph. Say rationale, one paragraph, risk objective, one paragraph, something like that. It's paragraph. Or maybe you can use a 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, you can use it. But I suggest you personally the paragraph is better. No need to give the subtitle in this way. So I am showing the subtitle for understanding, for memorizing. Okay, so let us start. Introduction by the rationale. I'd like to request the audiences, if possible, can you turn on your camera? You know that what is said all the time when you deliver the online lecture, if the all camera is off, sometimes it seems to be that we are delivering the lecture with a statue and we are confused whether I'm connected or you are listening, whether I'm delivering the lecture or not. I like to request you that is the best option is that you have to turn on your camera if possible. That is one kind of motivation for the speaker. And at least I can think that I'm delivering the lecture with the human. I'm not delivering the lecture with the statue. Okay, thank you. You know, what I said that the interaction part, that rational, first paragraph will be the general background of the paper. These background will come from the title. This background will come from the topics. You are doing the writing the paper in the artificial intelligence. So you rational with the artificial intelligence general background. Okay, then come to the next one. Its objective. This objective will be the your main objective. Your main objective. And I suggest you that do not write the objective in this way, like the I like to determine, to explore, to find. It's an old tradition. You have to smartly have to write the objectives. And you have to use a research term like analyze, explore, investigate, illustrate, demonstrate, relationship, literature review, comparative study, develop, construct the model, something like that. So you have to use this kind of term. This is a term. Okay. And then you have to mention that significance of your study, significance of your research, significance of your title. What you can do for this case, you have to check your title, your area. Then you have to explain what is the significance of your study. And then a scope. How you will design the scope. I always mention, in order to design the scope, you have to design the design it for the limitation. What is the limitation? Limitation in the box. Limitation in the box. So if you know your limitation, that means within the limitation you have to work. This is your scope. Limitation is the box, and your scope within the box. How you can work. So when you explore the scope, you have to think of the population, you have to think of the sample, what kind of research, variables, limitations, etc. Again, I remind you, you have to check the number of pages, number of words. So it's not like you can write the many pages. Scope only one paragraph. And the last paragraph of the introduction will be structure of your paper. So now you are writing the introduction, you have to mention in the next sections will consist of literature review, methodology, discussion, conclusion, so on. That we have to mention the structure of the paper. Why you are mentioning the structure? So that the readers, when they read the introduction, they can understand this is the structure of your paper. And this is the our main contents of the introduction. Now, in addition to that, there are statement of problem, research question, hypothesis. I think you more or less you are familiar with this one. There are 4 things: statement of problems, research question, objectives, and hypotheses. Those are correlated. Statement of problem, research question, objectives, and hypothesis. These 4 are correlated. As those are the correlated, It is not that necessary to write the all. If it is a PhD dissertation, then you can write them separately. Statement of problems, research question, it's the objectives and hypothesis. But if it's a journal paper, then only just objectives then. So I can remind you these four are correlated. So among these four, we are using this also objective. No need to mention a statement of problem, it's a question hypothesis. Definition of terms, basically this is that you think you are familiar with nomenclature, abbreviation. If it's a very technical paper, there's lots of terms, is a very not familiar. In that case, you can use that definition of terms or the nomenclature, something like that. Now, literature review. Basically, the literature review is very important in that sense that how you design this one. And you know, the literature review means a review of the literature, review of the previous papers, review of the relevant papers. So relevant papers will be there. Okay. The couple question: how you present these relevant papers? And I will show you the one pattern, and I suggest you that if you could apply this pattern, then definitely paper there's a possibility to accept. There are three parts basically: theory, related review literature, and previous study. Three segments. Did you notice there is a pyramid? And this pyramid that 3, 2, 1. Sorry, that the numbering also opposite direction. The pyramid is opposite direction. 3 is representing the theory. 2 is representing related review literature, and 1 is representing the previous study. What I said here, just look very carefully. 3 is representing the theory, then related review literature, and then previous study. So 2 is the related review literature, and then 1 is the previous study. So now come to the question: what is your job as a researcher? You're writing on paper. You see that the pyramid is a style. So there is a wide perspective, wide scope. Then you have to make the narrow, and now you have to job to come up with the vertex. So you are now in the vertex. So that when you are doing the narrow, and come to your own topics, significance of your study. If you have designed this kind of literature review, that is that quality literature review. Now comes the question: how will you design this literature review? If you look very carefully, I just give the one example so that you can think. Say, supply chain management in the hospital. Your research topic is hospital supply chain management. How will you start? At first, the theory. This is a theory of supply chain management, definition of supply chain management, any kind of concept of supply chain management. Number 3, theory, wider perspective. Your research area: supply chain management in the service, supply chain management in the hospital. Hospital is representing the service industry, right? So now let us find: is there any other paper supply chain management in the other service industry except the hospital? Why I like to focus this one? If you focus supply chain management in the other service industry, it means that your research is that valid research. So try to find out the other service industry like supply chain management in the university, like education institutions, education supply chain management in the suppose that tourism industry, supply chain management in the banking industry. All are the like service industry. All are the service industry. So supply chain management in the service industry. Then finally the previous study. Try to find is there any specific research on supply chain management in the hospital? Is there any specific research supply chain management in the hospital? And finally, you got that 2 research paper. Finally, you got the 2 research paper. One, supply chain management in the private hospital in the Nigeria. Supply chain management in the private hospital in Nigeria, number 1. Number 2, supply chain management in the public hospital in Chennai, India. Supply chain management in the public hospital in Chennai, India. So what I said that you got the 2 papers on supply chain management in the hospital. One is the supply chain management in the private hospital in the Nigeria, African region, and the supply chain management in the public hospital in Chennai, India. So that means you have the 2 papers on the the supply chain management in the hospital. Now these two paper you have to use. Now these two paper you have to use as a previous study. You understand? More specific, wider perspective, the narrow perspective. Now, if I need to ask you, then what is your research? Then why you are likely to do the research supply chain management in the hospital? Then how will you explain it? It's very interesting thing is that if you ask this question, you see, you got the one paper supply chain management in the private hospital in the Nigeria. That is case study, and that is for the private hospital. Another one, supply chain management in the public hospital in China, India. This is a case study, public hospital. So what is your research topic? Your research topic, you like to design the one model, supply chain management model for the hospital. That model will be applicable for the both. Whatever the public or private hospital they can apply, whatever the country they can apply. It is not based on any country, it is not based on any hospital. Any hospital, any country they can apply. So what I said that when you discuss the previous study, that is the one kind of signifies your study. What is the gap? Their research and your research, what is the difference? And which is very important. So what I mentioned here, just if you design this supply chain management in the hospital, you have to start in this way. What I said here, you have to think about this one, that the theory, relative literature, and then previous study. Now comes the next question. There is another problem. If you design that your literature in this way, the problem is that, and there is a problem is that there is a possibility of plagiarism. Basically literature review means previous works, right? So the plagiarism. And there is a lots of software. If you use the software, then you can get the similarity index. And suppose when you copy and paste from somewhere, there's a question of the similarity index. And for the conference, we are accepting 35 to 40% similarity index. For journal, we are accepting 20 to 30%, depends on the journal. And for the PhD purpose, we are accepting that below 20% similarity index. So what I said that when you do the copy and paste in the literature review, there is a possibility similarity index will be very high. If your similarity index is very high, then how you can reduce the similarity index? Today I'll give you some tips you can apply in the future. You can do one thing. At first copy and paste. Then check the word. Then you can rewording this one by using the synonyms. By using the synonyms, by using the thesaurus. By using the synonyms, by using the thesaurus, you can do this one, reword. So when you use the synonyms, when you use the thesaurus, automatically you are changing the words. The initial word was initial sentence was tense, present tense. Now you can change to the past tense. Initially it was the active voice. Now you can convert to the passive voice. And then suppose you can do the paraphrasing. Paraphrasing means the whole. You can take the whole paragraph and then you have to write in your own word. Rewrite in your own word. Usually paraphrase is a little bit difficult. It's difficult. So it's not very easy paraphrasing. You write the whole paragraph. But this is our ultimate target. So it means that if you notice that your similarity index is high, it not meaning that it is very difficult to reduce the similarity index. It's possible to reduce the similarity index. So that is the literature review, and I can remind you, whatever taking any kind of reference citation, you have to mention there all citations there. Maybe you are taking some of the one sentence in the one paper, but you have to mention the citation. We are very strong in the ethical issues in the research, especially the literature review. Okay. Now go back to the our in methodology part. Methodology. Basically, methodology is the core of the research paper. Methodology is the core of the research paper, and in this stage, you have to mention methods of research used. Different types of research you have to mention. Say what type of research you are using. Say what type of research you are using. Exploratory research, descriptive research, causal research, or maybe the quality quantity research, or maybe the basic is applied research. Somehow you have to mention what type of research you use. And definitely you have to mention as well as the data, like primary data or secondary data. So you have to mention this. And then hypothesis. You know that you will get the confirmation earlier whether you have the hypothesis or not. If you have a hypothesis, then you have to mention here. And maybe your hypothesis will come up with this question. Maybe your hypothesis will come up with this question. And it is not necessary to write the both hypotheses. You can write the one hypothesis, the null hypothesis or alternate hypothesis. Any one hypothesis you can mention. And so it means that there's some relation with this question, right? Do you remember earlier I mentioned as well? And then you can mention the operationalization of the variables. Say if you have a model, in the model there are some variables, independent variables. Then you have to mention that operationalization of the variables. And then your operational component, you start a questionnaire. What type of questionnaire you are using, like 7-point Likert scale, 5-point Likert scale, or simple attitude scale, something like that. You have to mention. If possible, you can mention measurement scale as well. And then respondents. You have to. It's very important. The thing is sample size determination. Means when you're designing the sample size, how you're designing the sample size. You know, uh, I'm involved with the PhD supervision in the few universities in Malaysia. So I always attend that serve as a PhD action examiner. So I always check this one, that whether they're managing the sample size, how they're collecting the sample size. So there is a few options you can mention about the sample size, like formula, the table, and reference. Table is very popular one rather than a formula and the reference. So I like to show you one thing is that this is a very popular table, the Taro-Yaman table. So you can apply the Taro-Yaman table. You know, the Taro-Yaman table, what is the advantage of Taro-Yaman table? Look very careful. Let's give you an example. In order to come to the decision of the sample size, you have to come to the first decision whether it is a known and unknown population. Whether known and unknown population. Say, if population is known, the population is known population. Then is sample size determination. 3%, 5%, 7%, 10% range of error. Say you are doing the own research, and in that research you are taking the 100 respondents. 100. You're doing the own research and you are taking the 100 respondents. 100. And the problem is that you have only 100 respondents, and then you the population size 5,000. And now anybody asks you that how could you think that your 100 respondents are sufficient to come up with the decision? How you can reply? Look, population size 5,000. If you look back at 10% range of error, 98%, 98 number of respondents. So you can mention according to this table, if the 5,000 is sample size, population size, then if you the 10% range of error, the number respondent 98, and you have the 100 respondent accurate. Among this all range of errors, 5% are mostly popular, more popular. Say now you are doing the same research, but your number of respondents say the 200. Then how you can explain? Even they ask you, are you confirmed that your 200 respondents are sufficient to come up with the findings? Mention clearly the population size is 5,000. If you use the 7% range of error, the number of respondents 196, and you take the 200 respondents, that's fine, no problem. So that is the advantage of the table. That whatever number of respondents, you have some logic, you can explain. Okay. So this is a Taro-Yaman table, and then sampling procedure. Basically, this is another important discussion, and you have to mention the probability sampling, non-probability sampling. Basically, you have to think the probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So first of all, you have to think about the known and unknown population. Based on the known and unknown population, you see that what I said, that is the known population, this is the probability sampling, is the unknown population, non-probability sampling, and then you have to come up with like a few subcategories. But what is my experience? I like to share with you that even I review the what I said that the PhD as external examiner when you join the PhD dissertation defense, we notice, student they mention the simple random sampling, okay, and on the other hand they mention there is a non-probability sampling. They say non-probability sampling, again they say there is a simple random sampling. So there is some contradictory. That's why I like to request when you write the journal paper, make sure that you understood that what type of sampling procedure you are applying, you have to understand earlier. Otherwise, if you write down this one, and you know that when the reviewers or the board member they'll check this one, they like to check this one. Well, they did the wrong interpretation. So either your population is wrong, or maybe problem sample procedure is wrong, or maybe your methodology is wrong. So that's why we like to request that you have to make sure this one sampling procedure you have to correctly you have to mention. Okay. Data collection. This very interesting thing is that data collection, you have to mention whether you have the primary data and secondary data, so that you can share with the properly in the journal paper. If you have the both data, means primary data, secondary data mentioned clearly from where and how you are getting the primary data. If it is the second data, then you have to mention how you can get the second data. So it seems to be that you have to mention clearly what type of data collection you are doing. Okay, so this is a part of the what I said that core of the research paper. So when write in journal paper, you have to remember that you have to mention the primary data, the secondary, or both the kind of data collection you did. Okay, now model development. We are now very important in another discussion that model development. In the if you have the model, then definitely you have to clarify this one, theoretical model and conceptual model. If you have a model, then definitely you have to mention the theoretical model and then conceptual model. So let us start in this way. Theoretical framework, theoretical model means previous works. Conceptual framework, conceptual model means your own work. Theoretical framework is the foundation of your conceptual model. You remember earlier I give you an example. Like there is a supply chain management in the hospital. You have the two papers, supply chain management in the private hospital in the Nigeria, supply chain management in the public hospital in the Chennai, India. Both are the theoretical framework. So now based on that, you like to use a new model, supply chain management model for the hospital. That could be applicable for any hospital, any public or private hospital they can apply, any country they can apply. That is the conceptual model. So theoretical framework means previous works and conceptual model means your own work. I like to give another example for your understanding. You know that I developed the one model that is the supply chain management model for the universities. The name of the model IJSCM model, Integrated Tertiary Educational Supply Chain Management Model. I can repeat, those are interested, the participants, you can check from the Google option that IJSCM, Integrated Tertiary Educational Supply Chain Management Model. So I developed this model in 2009. So that is the conceptual model. Okay. Now you see, after developing my model, then there are lots of research on the ITESC model, and not only that, there are a few PhD on the ITESC model. One of my PhD scholar, he finished his PhD in Malaysia 2018, and what he did, he used the ITESC model as a theoretical framework. So he used ITESC model theoretical framework, and then what he did, he developed the new model. That was the model of the Sustainable Educational Supply Chain Management model for the Malaysian University. Sustainable Educational Supply Chain Management model for the Malaysian University. That is the conceptual model. So he used the ITSM model, the theoretical model, and then he applied the sustainable concept upon the educational supply chain, and then he tried to apply for Malaysian University. The new conceptual model is coming. So that is what we said earlier. When you do any research, when you do any kind of PhD research or any kind of research, you main target the continuation of the research. You develop the one model, and then the prospect researcher they'll have to use your model as a theoretical framework, and then they'll develop the new model, and then their model will be used again the theoretical framework, and so on, so on, so on. And if you have the conceptual model, I suggest you definitely you have to mention your theoretical model. Without this, you cannot write the conceptual model. Okay, now data analysis discussion. This is that statistical treatment of data. That basically you have to mention your statistical analysis. You have to mention the statistical analysis. You have to mention that what types of tools you are using, Excel, SPSS, or structural allocation modeling. If you use the structural allocation modeling, then which software you're using, MOS, listed, PLS, you have to mention. And if you taking the 400 respondents in your survey questionnaire, then you have to mention the pre-test or pilot test. Maybe it will be the 20 to 30 experts' opinion. If you use the convex solve, you have to mention as well here. And you have the two type of analysis, or the descriptive analysis and the inferential analysis. The descriptive analysis is very simple: frequency, percentage, arithmetic mean, standard deviation. Inferential analysis based on the hypothesis testing. So you know that if you have a hypothesis, then you can think the hypothesis testing. If you have hypothesis, then you have to think hypothesis testing. That type of inferential analysis is very important. Again, what I said earlier, either you can use the null hypothesis or alternate hypothesis, anyone. And definitely, if you have the hypothesis testing, then you can apply the structural allocation modeling. And which software you want to apply is up to you, but you have to do this way. So you have to understand at first whether you have a hypothesis or not. If you have a hypothesis, then inferential analysis is mandatory. If you don't have the hypothesis, there's no need to use the inferential analysis. Now we are in the conclusion. Basically, conclusion is very important. I think you remember earlier I mentioned when you review the earlier paper, previous paper, research paper, you have to check their conclusion, whether they have any recommendation, whether they have any kind of further study, they have any kind of limitation, and then you have to start from there. So their conclusion is the starting point of your research. So when you design your own conclusion, you target how you can contribute to the prospective researcher. I always mention this one. If I ask you why you are doing the research, you should not do the research for your promotion. You should not do the research for the ranking. You should not do the research for your PhD. You are doing the research for prospective researcher. You are doing the research for the contribution to others. You are doing the research for the contribution to the society. I can repeat. You are doing the research for the contribution to the society. You just remember this one. So when you write the conclusion, you have to remember you are not doing this conclusion for you. You are doing this conclusion for the prospective researcher. They will read your conclusion. They have to start from there. Definitely, you have to match the findings of your research. It will come from the research question. So it's a very in brief. You don't need to discuss in details. And there will be no statistical language. You have to use the academic language. No statistical term will be there. Only academic language, academic term. So you shouldn't use the term at 0.001 significant level to tell test. It is understandable by the statistician. If you are a statistics expert, you can understand. But if you don't have the statistical knowledge, then how you can understand this one? You have to remember that do not apply the statistical language. You should apply the academic language there. Recommendation, any specific recommendation if you have for the academics, researcher or practitioners, real life application you have to mention. Basically, if you have a model, if you have a conceptual model, then it's possible you can provide a specific recommendation for the industry application. How they can apply this model for the real life application, you can explain there in conclusion part. Further study, and you remember your further study will come from the limitation. To check your own limitation. If you say that I could not find the limitation, this is another limitation. You have to find your own limitation of your research. Even if you could not find any limitation, you have to explore the your limitation. And if you have a limitation, you have to mention there as a part of the study. So that prospective researcher, they can start from there. Prospective researcher, they will start from there for the study. That's why you have to highlight the further study. Okay. And another one thing you have to mention in the conclusion, that is that the contribution of your research. The novelties of your research. Then how you can write the contribution, how you can write the novelties of your research. It could be happen in 3 ways. The first one, you can express your contribution towards that academics, researcher. You can express your contribution towards that industry, corporate people, practitioners, real life application. Finally, you can express your contribution towards the society. What I said, you can express your contribution towards that academics or researcher. You can express your contribution towards that the real life application for practitioners, corporate people, or finally you can share your contribution towards the society. Anyhow, you can explain the contribution. That is another part of the conclusion. So that when you construct the conclusion, the prospective researcher, they'll start from your conclusion. They can write they can do the research based on your conclusion. Reference, reference. There are lots of options in reference. You can apply the APS style. You can apply the number reference style. You can apply Harvard style, Vancouver style. All are accurate. Anyone you can apply. So what is the best option? The best option is that you should use the best option is that you should use apply that journal template. In the journal template, which reference they are using, you have to use that reference. So check their journal template reference. You have to use that reference. Either you can apply the APS style or number reference style, or you can apply the whatever they have. You have to apply that one. And we suggest that you can apply that the book chapter, books, journal, conference proceeding as a reference. And we emphasize do not use that website address as a references. We discourage. But if you have to use a website address, in that case, you have to mention date of browsing. If you use the website address, then you have to mention the date of browsing. And I suggest you that if you use the conference proceeding, that should have the ISBN number. ISBN number, definitely, because without the ISBN number, some conference will not be accepted. So just remember, this is the way that how you can construct the reference. Now, I'd like to give the one tips. As an editor-in-chief or editor board member of the different journals, what we do, we always check that few something, specific something. First of all, you like to see your abstract. If it is acceptable, then we like to see your conclusion. If it is acceptable, then we like to see your references. Your reference, more than 20 references, you are using books chapter, journal, acceptable. But if you notice that you are using the reference, all are from the website, you are in the references, all are from the for conference proceeding. These are the very strong references. What I said there, this is the way that how we are starting the review. If this level you can pass, then you have to go to introduction, literature, and so on. So it could happen that if your references are not strong, maybe your review will be stopped. Your paper will be rejected. So make sure that you need the strong references. But if you ask me that how there is a few indicators to accept the paper. The first of all, if you develop any model, any conceptual model, any new idea, new concept, you probably accept. First one. Second one, if you are using the survey and you survey sample size more than 300 respondents, you probably accept it. If your journal paper, you are applying the academic writing, very rich academic writing, then your paper will accept it. I give you the 3 dimension, how your paper can be accepted. What I said, at first I mentioned that if you develop the model, any new idea, new concept, your paper will be accepted.
Dr. Habib, Dr. Habib, Dr. Habib, you have muted your.
Hello.
Yeah, you have muted your. Yeah, it's fine now, Dr. Habib. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
We are facing this is nowadays, this is a very common issue.
yeah. Good, yeah,
Technical difficulty. And, I am continuing the lecture. Suddenly I noticed that something is stable.
yeah.
I'm so sorry, just a minute. I'm just sharing again this slide.
No issues. Go ahead, please.
Just a minute. And that's why I requested earlier that turn on your camera so that at least when I see the everyone, I can understand I'm stable, I'm continuing or not. Okay, thank you. So what I said that we are now in the last slide, that abstract, and what I mentioned, the abstract writing, that is the glamour of the paper. This is the glamour of the paper. So how you design the glamour of your paper is up to you. And then it's very important in that sense, that most of the reviewers, the edit board members, they have to depend on the abstract writing. So if you attract the audiences, if you attract the reviewers, then they have to go to for further. So this is a very important discussion, our last slide for today, how you can design that abstract. Okay. And I like to remind you one issue is that if you design the abstract, what I said today, now I'm going to discuss academic writing, people can fulfill that one. That means your paper definitely will be accepted. There is no question that whether they reject your paper. So now, come to the point is that how you can write the abstract. Again, I remind you, it is a glamour of the paper. And every human, they love to show the glamour, whatever the man and woman. Woman is ahead of the man, but at least everyone is willing to show the glamour. Now, I like to show how you can show the glamour of the paper. Look, first of all, the professional academic language. That is very important. I mentioned earlier that there are three ways that how you can get the acceptance from the reviewers or editor board members. So one option is the academic writing. So you have to provide that rich academic writing. So we have to ensure that how we could ensure that rich academic writing. So check this word. Maybe that your professional academic language, you have to mention that it will be very in brief, 100 words to 300 words, depends on the journal template. And then rationale will be very in brief, within one sentence. This rationale come from the like your topics of the paper, the title of the paper. You have to design that rationale in brief. The main objective, your main objective also, you can mention this one. Suppose you can mention the very clearly any kind of term, like what I said earlier, the professional term, like this study represents, demonstrate, illustrate, encompasses, depicts, highlight, and conceptual model, literature review, something like that. Means we have to use this kind of term so that it is, we call it the research term. We can call it the research term. Okay. So I would like to request you that this is the term, the research term you have to use. How you can use the main objective as the main objective? You have to mention that. Only one sentence you have to write it. And then you have to mention that what type of study we are doing. Like whatever the exploratory study, descriptive study, I mentioned earlier, I discussed earlier, qualitative, quantitative research. And definitely you have to mention that whether primary data, secondary data, or both data you are using. So that means this is the part of the type of study, type of data, you have to mention the one sentence. And then sample. If you have taken that 300 respondent, 400 respondent, then you can mention that number of respondent. But if the number of respondents like the 100, 150, 200, I suggest you no need to mention. If your sample size is a large sample size, you have to focus, you have to mention. If your sample size is the like 200, like the 150, it's better no need to mention. Okay. Sampling procedure, you have to mention that whether probability sampling, non-probability sampling. You have to mention whether probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Again, I remind you, if you are confirmed, you have to write down. If you are not confirmed, you should not write down. Sampling procedure, probability sampling, non-probability sampling. So you have to check known and unknown population, then you have to write it. Statistical tools, you have to mention structure allocation modeling. You have to mention the structure allocation model if you apply. Say you are doing the research, say AHP, analytic hierarchy process. So you can mention that that's OR technique, operations technique. And no need to mention the software name, like the Listrail, Amos, or the SPSS. Use the technique name rather than software name. And then finally, you have to mention the findings of the study. And this is the main findings of the study, learning outcomes of your research in one sentence. And definitely the last one, the contribution and novelties of your paper. You remember that I earlier mentioned you can show this contribution novelties in three ways. You can add the contribution novelties to the academics researcher. You can add the contribution novelties to the industry corporate, or finally you can add the contribution or the novelties towards the society. Towards the society. And I like to remind you one issue is that you just remember one thing is that if you could not find any kind of contribution, if you couldn't find any kind of contribution, at least you have to say the contribution towards the academics or researcher. At least you can share the contribution towards the academic researcher. How? I just give the one example, easy example for you. Say you are doing the one research based on the secondary data. You understand secondary data, like you are taking that research on the artificial intelligence. You are taking the 20 papers or the 10 papers and do the summary and come to the compilation, literature review. So now come to the next question. What is the contribution of your research? You understand, this is the secondary data. Make it very simple. You can write down in this way, that you can just mention this way. This study unlocks the further frontiers for the prospective researchers in that area. Very simple. This study unlocks further frontiers for the prospective researchers in that area. So if anybody asks you what is the contribution of your research, your contribution towards the academics, towards the research. So what I say that if you have a model, then easily you can mention how anybody could apply this model for the real application for the industry. If you do the research in the environment, if you do the research on the population, green supply chain management, if you do the research on environment, if you do the research on population, you can see the contribution to the society directly. So somehow you have to mention the contribution of the research. It could be in terms of the academics, researcher, in terms of industry, or in terms of society. So we need this contribution. I just remind you again, I mentioned earlier, we are not doing the research for PhD. You are not doing the research for the promotion. You are not doing the research for the ranking. You are doing the research for the society. You are doing the research for the prospective researcher. That's why we have to know this one. You know, when what I said earlier, when I joined that PhD external examiner in the defense committee, different defense committee, you know, I always ask this question to PhD scholars. Would you please explain what is the contribution of your PhD research? Most of the cases, PhD scholars couldn't explain it. So I suggest you in the Scopus in the journal or Web of Science in the journal, then you have to give the more concentration on this one, how you can add the contribution to the society or the academics or researcher or maybe the industry. If you can express this one in the abstract, in only one sentence, there is a possibility paper will accept. So this is the way that how we can construct the abstract. What I mentioned, rationale, main objective, type of study, type of data, sampling procedure, finding of the study, and finally the contribution of research. And then you have to mention the keywords. You have to mention the few keywords. You have to choose from people, those who search from the Google. When they search, they have to use some keyword. That keyword and your keyword the same, that your paper will be there. So when you choose the keywords, you have to check that that word should be available in your paper inside many times. So that when anybody use this search the paper, they will get your paper based on your keywords. So that's all that how you can construct the abstract. That's all from my side. So now this the floor is open. Professor Rajesh, please, the mic for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Habib, for a wonderful session, on basically publishing papers, and it was so detailed and so precise. I'm sure each one of us has got a lot of information, and now we are open to the discussion session. Um, uh, I would request anybody, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, or you can put your questions in the chat box also. So Dr. Sujavo, who says that what kind of different types of paper is accepted in Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4? It's about methodology or sample size or quality of information of research.
I think I already explained it when you, if you listen my lecture carefully, I mentioned the three way there is a better rate of acceptance in the paper. The first one is that if you have a model design, if you have any model, own model, conceptual model, or any new idea, new concept, that means we like to look in for idea generation. Model means idea generation. So this is the first option, if paper will be accepted. The second option, if your number respond is very high, it is a better acceptance level, 300 plus. Okay. And third one, the academic writing is very rich. Even you don't have the no model, no survey, only secondary data, but your academic is very rich. You probably accepted, even maybe the major correction. So that is something, the three things, if you follow this one, if you could maintain, there is a possibility people will accept in the Q1, Q2, Q3. Next.
Thank you, Dr. Habib. Any more questions? If anybody would like to ask questions, please. Anybody can raise your hands or put in the chat box.
I'd like to request, turn on your camera so I can see the audience participants, whether you are active or alive or not. And
Yeah.
I'd like to request, if you have any question, you can ask me.
I
You know
request
that,
to ask questions.
yeah, please.
Anybody?
You know, today morning I had a lecture in the University of Malaysia, UN. So I wrap up that one earlier so that I can join this on time. And I made intention of this one, but there is some of the overlapping the timing. So I reduce the time there and then I come back here. So if you have any question, I'd like to remind you again that I think you already noticed my email address is there. And you can join, you can send me an email if you have, or you can also use that AIBPM email. I have the one AIBPM email, Professor Mamun at the rate AIBPM.org. You can also send the email there so that you get the reply. And when you send an email, you have to mention AIBPM name so that you'll get the first response from me. And I just remind you again, one thing is that we have a plan that we like to organize the one another workshop that will be the like paper publication, so that today after today discussion, based on that you can bring the paper there so that we can review, instant review, and you'll get my instant feedback, so that you can think how you can publish the papers in the different journals. Our target is that Web of Science India journal and Scopus India journal. And I just remind you again, those are the young scholar and the new scholar, like the young faculty member. Those are the PhDs doing the PhD. Don't think about the Scopus in the journal or Web of Science in the journal at the initial level. In that case, you have to start from the peer-reviewed journal, because that when you have the one or two or few paper in the peer-reviewed journal, then you can move to the Scopus in the journal or Web of Science in the journal. If you make plan at first the Scopus in the journal, Web of Science in the journal, if your paper is rejected, that is a fully demotivation for you. And we don't want to create the demotivation factor in the research area. So that's why I like to start from the peer-reviewed journal, easy journal, 6 to 8 months, you can publish the paper, then you can move to the further level. So further level means Scopus Index or Web of Science in the journal. So I think the AIBPM, they are planning to organize the one workshop in the month of November, so that you can, if you join there, you can get it will be the real life experience of the paper review, and then you can think how you can enrich the quality of the paper. Okay. So any other question from the audiences?
Dr. Habib, I have a question for you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Carry on.
thanks, Dr. Habib. My question to you is, initially a researcher always, looks into quantitative research, but what about qualitative research? What is the scope of publication, especially in scope-based journals? Because, there are many, I'm sure there are many researchers who want to take qualitative research, but they're not very sure about how to go about it. What is the criteria, on the basis of acceptance or rejection? If you could throw some highlight on that aspect.
Thank you so much, sir. Quality research is a more subjective interpretation, and quality research means some psychological research, philosophical research, anthropology research. The Professor Rajesh asking a good question. In USA, if you do the research on the quality research, it's more acceptable than quantity research, because quality research is more hypothetical, more conceptual. But unfortunately, in our Asian countries, you could not see the quality research, you can see the quantity research. So there is a different culture. I always mention the different culture everywhere in the world. So I request you, if you are doing the quality research, say suppose your number respond very small scale, like 5 experts or the 10 experts. So come up the what I said, that the subject interpretation and the more academic writing, rich academic writing, then it's possible to accept. And don't think that if you do the quality research, there is a rate of acceptance is low. Don't think so. We need that academic writing to be rich. This is another fundamental issue for quality research. Again, I remind you, if you go to the USA, you can see the lots of quality research, and they assume that quality research is higher, better than the quantity research. Quantity research is easy to conduct, but quality research is difficult to conduct. And that's why that most of you, they love to do the quantity research rather than quality research. So that is means you have some acceptance level all over the world. So now it depends on you how you can construct that paper. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Habib, for your wonderful insights. Anybody would like to ask a question?
I got the one question is that
Yes.
let me discuss with this one, that there are two questions. What is the difference between the research methodology, research design? And is publication to an international journal through an agency not considered violate the publishing ethics? The author doesn't make the direct correspondence with the editor. Okay, the good question. The first one, the difference between the research methodology is the design. You know, research methodology means is the overall methodology, and design means how you will conduct your own research work. You research design. So that means research design is a part of the research methodology. You research design, how you are designing your research for conducting the research. This is your design. So it's a part of the research methodology. And second question, it is the excellent if possible the author can conduct the communicate with the editor directly. But my question, is it possible that all authors they can communicate with the author, all authors they can communicate with the editor directly? That is difficult. On the other hand, the journal partner or agency, they have a direct communication with the editor. So in that case, maybe there is a one media, like the author and the editor, there is another intermediate party, like agency or agent, whatever you call it. That if you ask the publishing ethics, I would say that you should not think the ethics violation in that sense, because you are getting the reviewer comments, right? That comment is supposed to come from the editorial board member, editor. So yes, why you are in the agent. If you use the agent, sometimes it happens that it's faster publication. If you are author due to the communication, you have to go to the regular process of journal publication. Regular process journal publication in the Scopus, and it will take more than 1 year. But maybe the agent, they will reduce the time. Maybe they can make it the 8 months or something like that. It depends on how they are doing the affiliation with the journal or not. So what I said, that don't think this way. You have to keep taking care of this one. Do not, if anybody in agent send their own letter that the paper accepted, don't trust this one. You have to, I always mention, don't ask anybody about the journal quality. Don't ask anybody whether the paper accepted or not. You have to do a self-judgment. Did you submit a paper to the online? Because now all journals, they have online option. If you submit online, there is online, the ID number will be there. ID generation. This is the confirmation that your paper submitted. If in the letter, accept letter, if you accept this letter, the ID is there, this paper is accepted. Secondly, whether they are matched the reviewer comments or not. If they match the reviewer comments is there, but there are some comments, that means the paper has been reviewed, peer reviewed journal, no problem. Then you have to think that is yes, whatever you are working with the agent, whatever working by yourself, this is not the matter, is that you have to get this one or not. So I believe that you have to understand smartly how can you deal this one. Intelligently you have to handle this one. Okay. Then I think that's all from here. I think Dr. Rajesh, now you can
Yes.
end up the session if
Yes, yes,
possible.
yes. I don't see any more questions coming in. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're concluding today's webinar on publishing high quality Scopus International Index journals. And finally, the AIBPM talks with Dr. Habib has come to an end. It was a very exciting and interesting talk. Uh, Thank you, AIBPM, for having me, and thanks to all the participants who followed the webinar till the very end. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. See you again. See you soon.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Rajesh Kumar Nair. This is the end of our webinar. On behalf of the AIBPM, we would like to say thank you to the keynote speaker, moderator, and participants. Thank you, and thanks for
My
all.
pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Dr. Habib.
Bye
See
Thank
you
bye.
you.
next time.
Thank you.
See
Bye
you.
bye. Thank you, AIBPM. Bye bye. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Yes. Take care.
Bye.
Yes. See you soon.
So you soon.